There's a moment after rejection that reveals far more than the rejection itself. It's not in the words he used when he said he wasn't ready, or that he didn't feel that way, or that he just needed space. It's in what happens next, how you respond when someone who once had access to your heart suddenly takes a step back. Most people expect a chase. They expect attention, pleading, proof that they still matter. But when you do the unexpected, when you stay silent, when you step back, when you prioritize your peace over their confusion, that's when the tables turn. This isn't about playing games. It's about reclaiming your dignity, about understanding that someone rejecting you doesn't mean you need to reject yourself. And the most powerful move you can make is choosing not to give someone who hurt you the privilege of watching you crumble. Instead, you rise quietly, you heal intentionally, you live fully. And that's what stays on his mind. That's what unsettles him. Because here's the truth. When you stop trying to win someone back, that's often when they begin to realize what they lost. When you don't beg for an explanation, your silence becomes the answer. When you don't try to stay in his life, you leave a void that wasn't visible before. You become the one that got away, not because you weren't enough, but because you finally saw that you were too much to be mishandled. This is where your power begins, not in his regret, but in your refusal to let his rejection define your worth. When someone rejects you, the first instinct is often to prove them wrong, to show them that they missed out, that they misunderstood your value, that if they had only given it more time, things could have been different. But in doing that, you place your power in their hands. You make their decision more important than your self-worth. The real shift comes when you resist that urge completely, when you take the rejection, not as a verdict on your value, but as That's when you stop chasing clarity from them and start offering peace to yourself. You don't need to beg, perform, or explain. You simply bow out with grace. And in doing so, you become unforgettable. Most people don't expect grace, they expect drama. They expect to be asked why. They expect you to try to keep a connection alive even after they've walked away. That's the pattern they're used to. But when you respond with calm, when you don't reach out, don't try to keep a conversation going, don't ask for another chance, it disorients them. Because suddenly the dynamic changes. You're no longer reacting to their decision. You're accepting it. You're no longer holding space for someone who let you go. You're holding space for your own healing. That kind of self-respect is rare and it's deeply magnetic. What breaks him isn't your silence for the sake of ego. It's your silence rooted in genuine peace. When he sees that you're not posting quotes to hint how hurt you are, not sending passive-aggressive messages, not showing up in places to be accidentally seen, it hits different. It's not performative detachment. It's real. You didn't just walk away, you actually let go. And that's what begins to haunt him. Not because you punished him, but because you didn't need to. You didn't retaliate. You didn't try to win. You simply moved on. Which tells him something more powerful than any confrontation could. You know your worth. There's something powerful about not needing closure. When someone rejects you and you don't chase an explanation, you create emotional distance. You send a message, whether he realizes it or not, that your value was never dependent on his ability to see it. He can't project his confusion onto you anymore. He can't shape your narrative. You took your story back. You started rewriting it without him, and that unsettles him. Not because you intended to hurt him, but because he never imagined you'd heal without his validation. Most people stay emotionally tethered to those who rejected them. But when you don't, when you truly walk away with your head high and your heart intact, it leaves an impression. You become the one who handled heartbreak with maturity, with elegance, with boundaries. And that's not easy to forget. He begins to feel it in quiet moments, the ones you used to fill with warmth, laughter, energy, presence. He notices the absence of your softness, your effort, your belief in him. That absence becomes loud over time, especially when he realizes he can't replicate what you brought into his life. Your silence speaks in those moments. Not as punishment, but as proof. Proof that you didn't need to perform to be enough. Proof that you were never begging for love, you were offering it. And he rejected that offer. Now all he has left is the memory of someone who gave fully and left gracefully. That's a hard thing to sit with. This is where your real power lies, not in pretending you're unaffected, but in being at peace regardless of what he thinks. You didn't ignore him to get a reaction. You did it because you recognized that being ignored by him was not a reflection of your value, and now he's the one left wondering. Not because you manipulated the outcome, but because you took your power back, quietly, without announcement, without revenge. Just calm, dignified distance. The kind of distance that doesn't scream, but lingers. That doesn't chase, but stays unforgettable. And that, more than anything, is what breaks him. When someone rejects you, they expect to be the one in control. They assume they've made the final call, that they've ended the dynamic on their terms, and that you'll still be lingering in their emotional shadow, hoping for a change of heart. But what truly disrupts that assumption is when you respond not with desperation, not with a need for their return, but with total disinterest. You don't beg, you don't ask for closure, you don't attempt to revive what they discarded. Instead, you become emotionally unresponsive to their presence. And that shift becomes a mirror they didn't expect to look into. That's when regret begins. Not just because you're gone, but because of how utterly unaffected you've become. People often confuse attention with affection. They think if you're quiet, you must be plotting something. If you don't reach out, you're waiting for the right moment to make your move. But when time passes, and your silence isn't temporary, when it becomes a consistent, peaceful state of being, it starts to send a different message. He starts noticing that you haven't made any attempts to reopen the door. He checks to see if you're watching his stories, you're not. He posts something that's clearly aimed at you, hoping to reel you back in. No response. He reaches out, casually, maybe with, "Hey, just thinking of you," or something vague to test the waters. You don't bite, you've emotionally detached. And that unshakable calm becomes deafening to someone who expected you to still be emotionally invested. What creates the deepest impact is not loud anger, but quiet indifference. Because anger still shows emotional energy. It means you care, even if it's negatively charged. But when you stop reacting altogether, when his actions or presence don't shift your mood, don't alter your day, don't even register as important, it forces him to confront the space he no longer occupies. That space used to be warm, filled with attention, affection, and energy you willingly gave. Now it's cold because you reclaimed it for yourself, and the absence of your emotional labor becomes his discomfort. You used to make things easier for him, always showing up, always forgiving, always understanding. When you stop doing that, he has to sit with the emotional weight you used to carry for both of you, and it's heavier than he realized. Your disinterest is powerful because it's honest. It's not a strategy, it's a symptom of healing. You've gone beyond pretending not to care. You actually don't anymore. And that truth radiates in the way you carry yourself. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth to him. You no longer see him as a standard to measure your desirability or value. You've placed your focus inward, on your growth, your peace, your goals. And ironically, that's when he starts paying attention. Not because you're trying to get him back, but because he's now realizing what he walked away from, and what's worse for him is that he can't reach it anymore. Not because you're playing games, but because you've moved on in ways that aren't reversible. What breaks him isn't just your silence, it's the new life you've built without him. It's the way you glow now, the way you laugh genuinely without him being part of it. It's seeing you happy without the undertone of missing him. That's what unsettles him. Because deep down he thought he'd always be a part of your story. Even if not romantically, he assumed he'd always have a role, a chapter, a mention, a lingering presence. But you wrote him out. Not in a cruel way, but in a necessary one. He stopped adding value to your life, so you stopped making space for him in it. Disinterest isn't something you manufacture. It's something that naturally emerges when you've given someone enough time and grace to be better, and they've chosen not to be. So now you're done. Not bitter, not resentful, just done. That's a version of closure he didn't prepare for. And that's what begins to haunt him. He sees you thriving, but knows he can't take credit for it. In fact, it happened in spite of him. And now, no matter what he says, how he tries to re-enter your life, you're no longer emotionally available for the conversation. Not because you're punishing him, but because he's no longer relevant. You didn't just ignore him, you stopped needing him. And that truth, more than anything else, is what breaks him. When someone rejects you, they don't usually expect you to become happier without them. In fact, even if they walk away, there's often this unspoken expectation that you'll be stuck for a while, that you'll need time to grieve them, that you'll be quietly missing what the two of you had. So when you suddenly show up in the world, not just fine, but glowing, radiating peace, joy, and confidence, it can shake them in a way they never saw coming. Because now your happiness isn't tied to them. You've proven that your light doesn't need their presence to shine. And that truth is deeply unsettling to someone who thought they were your sun. See, when you're healing, it doesn't always look like this big dramatic declaration of independence. Sometimes it's subtle. It's in the way you stop checking your phone, the way you no longer look for signs from the universe that he's going to come back. It's in the way your heart starts beating with peace instead of panic. It's when you realize that your world didn't end when he left. It just recalibrated. And maybe for a while, you didn't know who you were without him, but now you do. You've come back to yourself. And this version of you, the one who smiles because life feels good again, not because you're trying to prove something, this version makes him realize what he lost. People can be selfish without realizing it. They want the freedom to walk away, but they don't want to deal with the consequences of no longer being needed. They want you to be okay, but not too okay. They want you to move on, but not too far. So when you begin living in a way that doesn't leave space for them to return, it creates an emotional gap they didn't anticipate. He expected maybe a few tears, maybe some messages left on read, maybe even a hint of jealousy when you saw he was moving on. What he didn't expect was silence, growth, contentment. He didn't expect to feel replaceable, not because you tried to replace him, but because you outgrew the need for what he offered. You're not bitter, you're just better. The most powerful kind of happiness is the kind that doesn't require an audience. The moments where you're smiling to yourself, driving with the windows down, listening to your favorite song and realizing this is enough. You don't need a partner to make life feel full. You are the wholeness. And in that wholeness, you become magnetic. People feel it. They see you glowing in your photos, hear the confidence in your voice, notice the calm in your energy, and they wonder what changed. He wonders, how is she this okay? But what he's really wondering is, why doesn't she need me anymore? Because need used to be part of the connection. You used to show up with your heart open, hoping he'd match your energy. You gave more than you got, not because you were weak, but because you believed in what you felt. That belief was beautiful, but it came with a cost. It left you emotionally bankrupt at times, waiting on crumbs, hoping for consistency from someone who never planned to provide it. So now that you've stopped needing him, now that you've learned how to give that love to yourself, it creates a contrast. He remembers the version of you who would drop everything to talk, who would chase resolution, who wanted so badly to make it work. And now he sees someone who doesn't even flinch at his absence. That's jarring. Because it means he's no longer your source of comfort. He's no longer the emotional home he assumed he was, and that truth, though quiet, is loud in his mind. You're not living out of spite, you're just finally free from the emotional weight of someone who couldn't hold you properly. And that's the part that hits him hardest, that you didn't try to make him jealous, you didn't try to one-up him or post things just to get his attention, you just move forward, genuinely. That's what makes him feel the sting. Because now, if he wanted to come back, he knows he'd have to climb to meet you where you are. And that version of you, she doesn't chase, she doesn't wait, she doesn't shrink herself to make someone feel more secure. She lives in her worth. And the fact that you found your power without him, that's the heartbreak he never saw coming. When someone is used to being the center of your world, your silence can be deafening. It's not the absence of words that unsettles them. It's what the silence represents. It's the absence of needing to explain yourself, the absence of pleading, of trying to fix what was broken. It's the sudden space they find themselves in, where they are no longer being pursued, no longer the recipient of your efforts, your thoughts, your energy. And for someone who once had all of that, losing it doesn't feel neutral. It feels like a loss. A quiet, piercing reminder that they are no longer significant in the same way. And that realization can sting far more than any angry outburst ever could. Silence, when used from a place of strength, not manipulation, is one of the most powerful statements you can make, because it says, I've said all I needed to say. It says, I'm not in this emotional loop anymore. You no longer feel the need to clarify, to win, to convince him of your value. You're not trying to stay in his mind by force. Instead, you let your absence do the talking. You let the unanswered texts, the unseen stories, the lack of any emotional reaction become your You're not being cruel. You're being clear about the fact that you're no longer available for the version of love that left you feeling unsure, unappreciated, or unseen. And that clarity is uncomfortable for someone who relied on your emotional availability to feel important. He may not say it out loud, but your silence becomes a mirror. It reflects back to him what he gave, and more importantly, what he didn't give. Before, when he pulled away or acted indifferent, he might have felt in control. Maybe he thought you'd come running, or at least ask what was wrong. Maybe he thought your emotional investment would keep the door open no matter what. But now the door is closed. Not slammed, not locked with bitterness, but quietly, gently shut. And he's on the outside of a life that once revolved around him. What people often underestimate is how much it means when you stop giving your energy to something that drained you. And they especially underestimate it when you were once the person who always showed up. When you were the one who cared deeply, who remembered the little things, who made sure they felt heard, loved, important. That kind of presence is rare, and when it goes away, it leaves a gap that's not easily filled. He may not have valued it when it was there, but your absence teaches him more than your presence ever could. There's also something magnetic about someone who no longer needs to be understood by the person who hurt them. Because what you're showing is that your validation no longer comes from him. He can no longer determine your worth by how he treats you. He no longer has the emotional power to shift your peace. That doesn't just change how he sees you, it changes how he sees himself. Because in that silence, he's forced to ask questions he wasn't prepared to ask. Why didn't she react? Why isn't she trying to get me back? Has she really moved on? And under those questions is the one that hurts the most. Was I ever as important to her as I thought? Or did I mistake her love for weakness and now realize I was wrong? The truth is, love and silence are not opposites. Sometimes silence is what love becomes when it's been stretched too far, when it's been exhausted by one-sided effort. And when you choose peace over chaos, it doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you cared enough to stop betraying yourself for the sake of someone who couldn't match your depth. You loved loudly once. You fought for connection. You showed up, but now you've chosen a different kind of strength. The strength to let him wonder, to let him sit in the discomfort of losing someone who no longer feels the need to speak. Your silence doesn't mean you're cold. It means you've found warmth within yourself. It means you're no longer trying to be heard in a space that never valued your voice. And that quiet, that calm, that unwavering sense of self, it's what breaks him. Not because you intended it to, but because he never thought you'd stop trying. He never thought you'd go quiet. But here you are, no longer seeking his attention, no longer asking for anything, just living. And in that living, in that silence, you say more than words ever could. When you finally stopped looking back, something inside you shifted. Not just a small change, but a quiet transformation. You realized that his rejection was never about your worth. It was about his capacity to recognize it. And while he thought your silence was you giving up, it was actually you reclaiming your power. It's in the moment when you stop chasing closure, validation, or understanding from the person who hurt you that you actually begin to heal. And the irony is, that's often the exact moment he starts to feel the consequences of pushing you away. You see, people don't usually grasp what they've lost while they're still being chased. It's easy to take someone for granted when they're always showing up, always initiating, always holding the emotional weight of the relationship. But when that consistent presence disappears, when the texts stop, when the stories go unviewed, when the energy quietly retreats, reality hits. He notices, maybe not on day one, maybe not even by week 2, but eventually it creeps in. The absence, the silence. the empty space where your attention used to be. And that's when the regret starts to settle. Because what once felt secure to him, your love, your time, your emotional labor, is now a memory, and not one he can summon back with a casual message or a late night "I miss you." That's when he starts asking himself questions, the same kind you used to lie awake with. Why did I push her away? Why didn't I appreciate her when I had the chance? Is she really gone? Those thoughts that once belonged to you are now his burden to carry. And while you're not there to see it, he begins to realize that what he lost was rare. It's easy for people to assume you'll always be there, especially when you're the kind of person who loves deeply and loyally, when you make someone feel seen, heard, and cared for. But what he didn't account for was the quiet strength underneath all of that softness. He didn't see the resilience that could walk away without causing a scene, the dignity that wouldn't beg or bargain for a place in his life. He mistook your loyalty for permanence, but you weren't permanent, you were present. And presence is something that has to be nurtured, not expected. Now he's left to sit with that loss. And what makes it harder is that you're not performing your strength, you're living it. You're not trying to make him jealous. You're not crafting stories just to be seen. You're not dropping hints or half-hearted breadcrumbs to pull him back. You've gone quiet, not out of pettiness but out of peace. You're choosing yourself now. You're investing your energy where it's reciprocated. You've learned that you don't have to hold on to someone who couldn't hold space for you. And in that shift, in that silence, he sees the version of you he didn't protect, the version that once looked at him with admiration, the version that stayed up late to talk through his bad days, the version that forgave more than she should have. That version is no longer waiting. She's growing, moving, healing. And the more you step into this new chapter, the more the past becomes something he wishes he could rewrite. Regret is a slow burn. It doesn't always come from a dramatic revelation. Sometimes it's in the little moments. When he hears a song that reminds him of you, when he sees someone with your laugh, when he reaches for his phone and realizes he doesn't know what to say anymore. That's when it hits. He had something real, and now he doesn't. And maybe he tells himself it's for the best. Maybe he even tries to convince others that, but deep down he knows he lost someone who would have done anything to stay. And she's not coming back, not because she's angry, but because she finally understands her worth. That's what breaks him. Not the silence alone, but what the silence represents. It's the evidence of your growth, the proof that he no longer gets to have a front row seat in your life. And he knows, whether he admits it out loud or not, that he'll never find another version of you, because you were the rare kind of person who gave love freely and stood tall when it wasn't returned. And now that you've walked away with grace, he's left with nothing but the echo of what could have been. When you stop engaging, when you stop responding to every breadcrumb, every vague message, every attempt at pulling you back without genuine effort, that's when you truly take your power back. There's something deeply unsettling to someone who once held your attention when they realize that attention is no longer theirs. When the person who used to react with emotion, who used to show they cared, even in frustration or hurt, suddenly goes still, it changes the entire dynamic. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of strength. It's the moment you decide that your peace is worth more than the chaos of someone else's indecision. This kind of silence, the kind that follows your decision to stop explaining, stop pleading, stop hoping, is what ultimately gets to him. Because you're no longer feeding the dynamic that made him feel powerful. There's no more push and pull, no more emotional highs from your attention or lows from your disappointment. It's just stillness. It's just you choosing yourself in the quietest, most profound way. And that stillness forces him to confront something he's been avoiding, his own emptiness. You see, for people who thrive on control or validation, your reaction is often their fuel. Even if things were bad, even if he didn't treat you the way you deserved, he could count on your feelings to keep the connection alive. But when those feelings are no longer offered, when your energy is completely withdrawn, that's when the emotional balance shifts. He starts to feel the discomfort you carried. He starts to wonder what you're thinking, what you're doing, who you're becoming without him. And the most terrifying part for him is that he doesn't get the answers anymore. You used to give them freely, even when he didn't deserve them. Now, there's nothing but your absence. And it's that absence that becomes deafening. Because you're not trying to prove anything anymore. You're not trying to make a statement. You're simply done. You've accepted that you were never going to get what you needed from him. Not because you weren't worthy of it, but because he wasn't capable or willing to give it. And that acceptance, that release, is what allows you to step into a version of yourself that doesn't carry the weight of someone else's rejection. He notices, don't doubt for a second that he doesn't, even if he pretends like he's unbothered. Even if he's out partying, or dating someone new, or posting stories that feel like they're meant to show you he's moved on. Those are distractions. Because at the end of the day, he knows. He knows that the version of you who used to care that deeply, who used to show up even after being hurt, who used to give him chance after chance, is gone. And what's left is a woman who isn't bitter or angry, just uninterested. That's a version of you he can't manipulate, can't guilt, can't sweet talk. That's the version of you he can't get back. Because she's finally realized that her love is a privilege, not a given. You don't owe him your time, your forgiveness, or your attention. And once you fully embody that, it becomes clear that you're not playing any games. You're just living a life that no longer includes him. This kind of strength doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It shows itself in your choices, in your standards, in the way you no longer entertain less than what you deserve. And while he may try to find pieces of you in others, he'll quickly learn that what you gave came from a heart that was sincere, loyal, and rare. He may look for that energy again, but he won't find it in the same form, because you're not just moving on, you're evolving. You're building a life where you are not defined by the pain someone else left behind, but by the peace you created in their absence. So when he finally breaks down, when he realizes what he truly lost, it won't be because you said something, it will be because you didn't. It will be because you stopped waiting, stopped hoping, and started living. He'll break not because you're gone, but because he knows now that you're never coming back. When you finally stop chasing closure, stop demanding recognition for your worth, and simply move forward with grace, dignity, and self-respect, that's when everything shifts. You no longer need him to see your value because you see it clearly now, and in that clarity you become untouchable. His regret isn't your responsibility. His realization came too late, and that's not your burden to carry. You're not here to fix, prove, or wait. You're here to grow, to glow, and to live fully. Let your silence speak volumes. Let your peace be your power. And let the life you create without him be the most beautiful response you never had to give.